Welcome, hello, and welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Ask Abhijit show. I hope you're all doing very well. And today we're going to take questions that you have asked in the comments. So that's what it's going to be. I'm not going to take questions from the live chat until the questions that I've selected will get over. And before we begin, let's take a look at who all is there on the live chat. I can see Yash Tiwari, Chandrasekhar Teli, P24, Divyanshu Rai, Geopolitical Dubey, Tejas, Karthik, Prajna Paramita, Yash Tiwari, Komal, Aru Basu, Shashwat, Gautami, Nimjay, Rishi, LS, Ayush Pandey, Himanshu, Raj Purohit, Anvit Shetty, Ashuvi Sharma, Lage Raho Online, Khan Rafael Ali, Simrandeep Singh Baga, Akash B.A. Thakur, Pavan Kumar Singh Bais, Mr. Change, Vishal Kumar Verma, Saurav, Andar Nagri Gamer, Yash Tiwari, Zubon Izung, Siddharth Sarkar, Rishi, Rajat Duhan, Lucky Bhardwaj, Riyansh, Vladimir Putin, Akash B.A., Chirag Avasthi, Gaurav, Shirish, Megdeep, Lucky, Komal, Gulu, Nutan, Govind, Kuki, Senpai, Ayush, Shaurish, Satyaj, Gautami, Way of Life by Dr. Ayush, Nikhil, Karan Nalawat, Akshay, Nikhil, Ajay Kumar Akula, Piyush Singla, Messi ke saath, Dr. Jay Shankar, hello, Vishnu Mohanan, Piyush, Harsha, Jalpananda, Rekan, Het, Ajit, Sangeeta, Kabir, Z, Jagjit Singh, and so many other people. So I'm going to stop here, otherwise I'll not be able to get ahead with the questions. So thank you so much for all being online. I know tonight is the IPL final, I believe, right? I wonder who's playing. Doesn't matter. I haven't been watching the IPL, so I have no idea. And thank you so much for all of you who, instead of watching the IPL, are here. I appreciate that. Okay, let's see the questions. What questions do we have? All right. Let's take question number 1. This is by Kul Tegin. I am a Turk, and many of our khans or kings before Islam, when their religion was shamanism or Tengrism, had the name Ishbara. It is from Sanskrit ishvara. It was a very common name among Turks. We see it all over our old inscriptions. Indeed, isn't that interesting? Many of the khans and khagans in the first millennium AD, before the Turks became Islamized, their names were Ishbara, which is from the Sanskrit Ishwara. Isn't that interesting? And let's take a look at some evidence of that. Let's do a Google search. Let me put this on the screen. A Google search. I'm going to search for Ishbara. Okay, let's take a look. So we are doing a Google search for ishbara. And as always, let me remind you all that Wikipedia is not necessarily a good source of information, but let's take a look at what Wikipedia has to say. So Wikipedia says ishbara, Old Turkic, whatever this is a Turkic name deriving from Sanskrit ishwar. And this name was carried by different rulers in history. Ishbara Khagan, East Gokturk Khagan, 581 to 587 AD, which is the 6th century AD. Ishbara Tulis, who was in the 7th century AD. Ibris Ishbara Yagu Khagan, 7th century AD, and so on. And we can take a look at some of these individuals. Ishbara Khagan, 6th century AD. He was the Khagan of the first Turkic Khaganate. And over here it says his name is non-Turkic. Obviously, it's a Sanskrit-derived name. So very interesting piece of information, very interesting insight we have been given by our friend over here, Kul Tegin. And it is indeed correct that many of the old Khans, before the Islamization of the Turks, had the name Ishbara. And who knows what else, what other influence they had. And let's understand why there was this Sanskrit and Indian influence when it comes to the old Turks before Islamization. Let's go to the map. So we're going to take a look at the map. And okay, let's realign this. We know where India is, and we're talking about Central Asia, northwest of India, beyond Gandhar, which is Afghanistan. So this stans, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, etc., even eastern Ukraine etc. All of this region is Central Asia, including Kyrgyzstan, including present day Xinjiang of China. And this entire region, before the Turks came into the picture, this entire region was called Scythia. The Scythians were Indo-Iranian nomads who had this massive region that they oversaw and resided in. And the Scythians were of, well, they are classified as Iranian origin people or Indo-Iranians, and their language, religion, culture, ethnicity was very similar to the Indo-Iranians. And we know that lots of there was a lot of Indian influence in Central Asia even before the Scythians even existed there. I mean, the ancestors of the Scythians were it was the result of migrations out of India in very deep antiquity. So you had lots of Indianized kingdoms in present day Central Asia thousands of years before that. And when the Turks first came into the region, the origin of the Turks was in the vicinity of present day Mongolia. The Huns, the Xiongnu. And when they first came into Central Asia, they would have come into contact with these Indianized people, and they would have adopted some of their customs and their culture. And that's why, and that's how this happened. Very interesting piece of history. Not many people are aware of this. But yeah, I mean, I would have like to thank our friend here, Kultegin, for bringing this up over here. Okay, next question. Rodrajit Sarkar says the Turks permanently colonized Central Asia, some parts of the Caucasus and Anatolia. But why couldn't the Turks permanently colonize and settle in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, and India? Right, it's true. The Turks colonized Central Asia. Let's once again go to the map. Where's the map? Here's the map. Okay, we're looking at Central Asia. So if you look at the Central Asian countries today, Kazakhstan is the largest one. Then you have Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan. All of these nations, all of these present-day nations, even if you look at the Xinjiang region of China, the homeland of the Uyghurs, etc., all of these peoples are Turkic peoples that they follow the Turkic culture and they speak various Turkic languages. And ethnically, they are like 50-50, 50% Scythian, probably maternally, and 50% Turkic. That sort of ethnic mix they have. So the Turks were able to permanently colonize Central Asia. All of Central Asia today follows Turkic culture and speaks Turkic languages. This also happened in the Caucasus region. For example, Azerbaijan, and then it went all the way into Anatolia, which is Turkey, present-day Turkey. And Anatolia, that's correct. But why couldn't the Turks permanently colonize and settle in Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and Iran? Well, when it comes to we're talking about mainly the Indian subcontinent and the western part of the Indian subcontinent, or which is Iran. So the Indian subcontinent historically was the largest population center in the world. And when you have such a gigantic population, a few thousand Turks coming in is going to change nothing. So the Turks did attempt to colonize and settle. I mean, they did settle in various parts of the subcontinent. They did first set up the Delhi Sultanate, then the Turco-Mughal Empire, which lasted a couple of centuries. The Aurangzebs and the Akbars and all that, Jalaluddins and Zahiruddin Baburs and all that. So they did that, but they could not permanently colonize India in the sense that they could not change the culture of India the way they did in Central Asia. But they did do that in certain parts of the subcontinent. Afghanistan has been totally changed. Afghanistan is a purely Islamic country, and even the ethnic mix in Afghanistan has changed significantly. The true native Afghans are the Pashtun people, who are a subcontinental people. Okay, and the language is a subcontinental language, Pashto. I mean, linguists will claim that it's an Indo-Iranian language or an Iranic language and all that, and the Afghans love that. But the truth is that it's a subcontinental language, and the Pashtuns are a subcontinental people. But you have lots of other ethnicities today in Afghanistan. We have the Turkic peoples, not the Tajiks. The Tajiks are an Iranic people, but we have Uzbeks, we have Turkmens, we have the Kyrgyz, we have even Kazakhs, etc. So a significant, and the Hazaras, obviously. The Hazaras came in through a different route to the Mongols, not through the Turks, but same difference, let's say. So the majority population of Afghanistan even today is Pashtun, but there's a significant non-native population that can today be considered native because they've been around for the past 1,000 years, roughly. So those are the Turks, and there's a lot of intermingling between the Turks, the Turkic peoples, and the Pashtuns, and you can see that in the appearances of some of these peoples. So they could actually, the Turks, actually permanently change the demographics, the religion, the culture of Afghanistan. And of course, Pakistan is a consequence of the Turkic occupation of India. So currently, Pakistan, this temporary artificial nation, follows a non-subcontinental culture and religion. And even the language, the Urdu is a mongrel language that is based on Sanskrit grammar and vocabulary, but it has a lot of vocabulary from the other languages, like the Turkic languages, uh, Arabian, as well as Persian. Persian, I don't mind too much because it's a sister language when it comes to India. But Arabic is definitely a non-subcontinental language, and the Turkic languages also are non-subcontinental languages. So they could permanently, I mean, as of now, I mean, when it comes to the culture and demographics of Pakistan, the religious demographics, it's almost like a permanent change. And Afghanistan, definitely a permanent change. What about Iran? Well, the Arabs did the first damage to Iran by destroying Zoroastrianism and, well, completely changing the religious demographics of Iran in just a few decades. And then the Turks did occupy Iran. Okay, when this fellow Nadir Shah came and sacked Delhi and did a lot of damage in India, Indians think of him as an Iranian emperor, but he was a Turkic emperor who ruled over the Persians. So there were Turkic empires in Iran as well. Iran was colonized by the Turks, and the Turks did a lot of demographic changes, demographic re-engineering in Iran. They brought in lots of immigrants from the Caucasus region who settled in Persia. They brought in a lot of Azerbaijani people in Persia, in Iran. I mean, lots of important people in Persia are of Azerbaijani and various other ethnic origins. So today, if you look at Persia, only about 50% of the people of Persia are of Persian ethnicity. Only roughly 50%. The rest are either Turkic or Arabic or Azerbaijani or Pashtun or Baloch or whatever. So that's what happened. So a significant demographic re-engineering of Iran was done by the Turks. If you look at the Persian people today, Iranian people, lots of them look almost, European in appearance. The true Persians, the real original Persian appearance was light brown skin, dark hair, and dark eyes. That's the original appearance of the Persian people. But today you have people who look absolutely European, and those are the people who have been brought in from the Caucasus region, Azerbaijan, etc. And that's a significant percentage of the population of Iran today. So the Turks were able to do this, to change the demographics of Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan, and to a very small extent India. But India is so large a civilization, a subcontinental sized nation, that it's almost impossible to make any significant changes, lasting changes. Eventually everything will get absorbed into the mother nation. Yeah. Okay, user case whatever says, what's your opinion on the death of Iran's president, Mr. Raisi? Look, I've spoken about this before. I'll touch on this briefly. From whatever information we have, it looks like it was an accident. Okay, helicopters, rotorcraft are inherently unstable, more unstable than fixed wing aircraft. Let me show you a tweet of mine from a few years ago. Where is it? Here we are. Come on. Okay, let's put this tweet on the screen. So this is a tweet. This original tweet that I've quoted here is from October 12, 2019. I don't remember in what context I wrote this. I tweeted this. I said, avoid helicopters whenever possible. They're not as reliable as fixed wing aircraft. And then I quoted that and said, sad but true, one day after the death of that basketball player. What's his name? Not LeBron. Whatever that guy's name was. I forget the name. I'm sure some people in the comments will be able to help me out with that. So I tweeted that, sad but true, Kobe Bryant, I think the name, yeah, in 2020. And this happens over and over again. We had the unfortunate demise of General Bipin Singh Rawat. Then we had a helicopter crash in Taiwan, which killed their army chief of staff or whatever the rank was. And now we have the death of Mr. Raisi. The thing is, helicopters are rotorcraft are inherently more unstable than fixed wing aircraft, especially when you have a rotorcraft, a helicopter that is old, that's ancient, that is not under this license agreement or whatever maintenance thing, and it doesn't have GPS, it doesn't have the latest technology. Well, it's dangerous, especially when you're flying half blind in the fog, in the clouds, with hills not far away from you. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. So, from whatever information we have at our disposal, it looks like it was an accident. But let the government of Iran do their own investigation and come up with their findings. From where I am, from whatever information I have, it looks like it was an accident. Rishi says, after the death of Ebrahim Raisi, what's the future of the Chabahar port project, the rupee Rial trade, India-Iran, and India-Iran relations in general? I don't think the death of President Raisi will change much when it comes to the India-Iran relationship. The India-Iran relationship is reasonably strong. I mean, it could have been better was it not for the meddling of the United States. Iran is a nation that's rich in oil and gas, petroleum and natural gas. And it makes a tremendous amount of sense. I mean, look at the map. Of course, we have to go to the map, right? So where is map? Let us find map. So we have map here. As you can see, Persia, Iran is our neighboring country. Pakistan is a temporary aberration on the map. So you go west from the Sea of Zoroastrian, and you enter go through the Strait of Hormuz, and you are in the Persian Gulf, right next to India. And this is a region that's rich in oil and gas. And India is a giant country with a huge appetite and a huge demand for oil and gas, because we are a growing economy. And to grow an economy, you need fuel, and that fuel is typically oil and gas. It makes so much sense for India to source its gas and petroleum requirements from right next door from Iran. But the Americans have been meddling in this matter, and they have essentially arm twisted India into not doing this. And you may say that, oh, we are too weak. I mean, we should not have given into their threats and all. I mean, are you kidding me? We are living in the real world here, right? When the biggest thug in town says that, do what I say or else, you're gonna do what he says. The biggest thug in town, the biggest gunda in town. That's the US. So, despite that, we have recently signed the Chabahar port project. The Chabahar port is over here. It's a 10-year deal, which will most likely be extended depending on how it goes, and it's gonna reconnect India with Central Asia. As you can see, India is a nearly landlocked nation apart from the sea access that we have, gigantic sea access. Pakistan has cut off our access to Central Asia, our thousands of year old historic access to Central Asia, and the Chinese occupied Tibet essentially ensure that we don't have any access to Eurasia as well. Otherwise, we could have gone straight to Russia through the Central Asian regions, and we could have gone all the way to Europe. Had trade routes with Europe through overland. But all of that's been cut off. So the Chabahar port deal will enable India to regain some access to Central Asia, also reconnect with Afghanistan, bypassing Pakistan. And that's great for Iran as well. It's great for the international north-south transport corridor, which benefits Russia, which benefits Iran, which benefits lots of Central Asian and Caucasus region nations. There is the rupee Rial trade, which is beneficial for both nations and all. So I think the death of President Raisi will not make any difference when it comes to these matters, to the broader India-Iran relationship, because we have to understand, first of all, that the president of Iran is not a very powerful person. The true power in Iran doesn't lie with the president. Okay, it lies with the supreme leader. The supreme leader is not elected. All right. So understand how things work. The president is just well, it's okay. It's just somebody who goes and deals with the rest of the world. But the true leadership in Iran is not elected. All right, it's a permanent leadership for now. Okay, Blumenthal says, sir, a Persian cousin here. Hello, Persian cousin. Good to hear from a Persian cousin. The question is, will Iran get strong and developed after our current government, which is going to fall soon, with help of India? Obviously, a strong Bharat on our border is going to help us economically. Well, I'm not sure about when or if the current government of Persia will fall. Clearly, it is well known that there is a lot of discontent within Persia with the Islamic government in Iran. It is no secret that lots of Persians do not see Islam as their true religion and culture. Persia was forcibly Islamized by the Arabs. We know that it's very well known. If you read the Shahnameh of Firdausi, you can see in what way he describes the Arabs and what they did to Iran. The Arabs were not popular, and whatever was done to Iran, even a few centuries after the fact, it was still deeply unpopular. It is deeply unpopular today, also among certain sections of Iranian society. So whether the government falls or not, it's I would rather not comment on that. If the people of Persia, if the people of Iran do not like this government, well, then they can take whatever action is needed. That's, I would say, from my perspective, an internal matter of Persia. But I would very much like to see Persia thrive and prosper, for sure. Right now, I mean, the past few decades, past several decades, many decades, Persia has been crippled. Its economy has been crippled by the tremendously heavy sanctions that have been imposed by the United States. It's caused a lot of suffering, a lot of death and disease and whatnot. The economy has been crippled, so Persia has been treated in a way that's similar to the way the Americans have treated Cuba. So it's sad to see this, and I would very much like to see Persia prosper and thrive in the future. And obviously, in the future, there's going to be a common border again between Bharat and Persia. The temporary aberration will soon disappear off the map. I can assure you of that. And yeah, then the region will be way more peaceful. No more terrorist regime over here. So the three neighboring nations, India, Afghanistan, and Iran, will be able to breathe a sigh of relief when this threat disappears. No, I have no ill will towards the people of Pakistan. They are our own people, no doubt about that. At least from the ethnicity perspective, from the ancestry perspective, of course, many of them would like to see India wiped off the map, but unfortunately, it's going to be the other way around. So in the future, I would like to see a lot more cooperation between India and Persia, Bharat and Persia, and I would very much like to see Persia, the people of Persia, thrive and the nation of Persia prosper, very much so. Okay, third stone obliterum says, we Hayastani people were also Zoroastrian until 330 AD. Hayastan is Armenia, by the way. Okay, Hay is the Armenian ethnicity. So Hayastan had suddenly a stupid king, Tridat, who converted to Christianity and ordered all Hayastani people, all Armenians, to convert to Christianity. But 50% of us said no way and escaped Hayastan and went to Yazd and Isfahan in Persia. I wonder if we are mixed in there in India with the community. Unfortunately, my family converted to Christianity, and I was born a Christian. But at 15, I rejected it. Now I don't know what I am. Okay. Let's once again go back to the map to get the correct context of what we're discussing. So when it comes to Armenia, it's actually a nation that's reasonably far away from India. So you know where India is. You go westwards, there is a temporary nation. Then we have Gandhar, we have Persia, and then we have Iraq, Syria, and you have Armenia. So Armenia is here in the Caucasus region, South Caucasus region, and it's currently under attack from all sides, from Turkey as well as Azerbaijan. Now, Armenia used to be much larger in the past. Armenia is a very small. Today's Armenia is a very small remnant of the erstwhile kingdom of Armenia, which was much greater and much larger. The whole of Anatolia had lots of Armenian origin people, and like our friend over here says that in the fourth century AD, there was this king called Tridat who ordered all Armenians to convert to Christianity, and lots of Armenians did not like this, so many of them escaped. Some of them went to Isfahan, which is over here, and then some of them went to Yazd in Iran. Where is Yazd? Can we locate Yazd? Okay, not Shiraz. We want to see where is Yazd. Okay. I'm gonna spend some time locating it. Is it? Let's just take the shortcut and say Yazd. Okay, here we have it, Yazd. And there are lots of Indians Zoroastrians whose name is Yazdi. And those are the ones who escaped from Yazd after the Arabic invasion and occupation of Persia. Yes. So apparently, lots of Armenians also escaped to places like Isfahan and Yazd and settled down there. And it is known, I mean, we know for a fact that lots of Armenians had a presence in India over the centuries. I mean, if you go to places like Surat, for example, there is an Armenian cemetery there that dates back at least about, I don't know, 400-500 years. And the Armenians used to trade in India, and Indians also had a presence in the Caucasus region, in Armenia, etc. You go back 2,000 years, there were Hindu temples in Armenia that were then destroyed, and churches were built on top of these temples, probably by kings such as this Tridat, who's being referred to over here. So there is a significant, despite the geographical distance, there is a significant connection between India and Armenia. And yeah, so Armenia is probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Christian nation. At some point in time, there would have been Hinduism, and some point in time, we know for a fact that there was almost everyone was Zoroastrian as well. And Indians were traders, and they used to travel, and they used to go to all parts of the world. So you would have had a Hindu and Indian presence there as well. And we know that there was an Armenian presence in India as well. So yeah, that is in very brief the history and the connection between India, Persia, and Armenia. Armenia has had a tragic history. Of late, it's been even more tragic. And yeah, there is this cognitive dissonance and disconnect that people have between the cultures that have been imposed upon them. Lots of Persians are trying to revert back to Zoroastrianism, their ancestral culture and faith. And looks like there is a similar sentiment in Armenia as well. So yeah, I would say that I wish everybody the best, and they have to find their own way forward in this. Rodrajit Sarkar says, why does nobody care about Armenia, the first Christian country in the world, which is slowly being devoured by Azerbaijan and Turkey? On the other hand, it seems like half of the world is crying for Gaza. What's the reason behind this? The reason behind this is that everybody has an agenda. There's an agenda. And when it comes to the Gaza thing, there is a significant lobby in the US that is pro-Palestine, pro what shall we say, pro-Arab or pro whatever, pro-Middle East. Right? There's a significant lobby in there. The Rashida Tlaibs and the Ilhan Omars and all these people. And there's a significant similar lobby in various other Anglophone nations, the Five Eyes nations. And you know what kind of migration has been happening on an industrial scale in the US, in the UK, in Europe, etc. So it's no surprise, therefore, that there is a very strong lobby which has an agenda that is very pro Gaza, and that same lobby has a very big issue with India as well, and it brings in the Kashmir issue whenever they feel like, on demand. So there is that. And then there is the case of Armenia, which is a helpless small country that is being, yeah, like you said, devoured by Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan, let's understand, is a proxy of Turkey. It's also a country that is supported by Israel and the United States. And Turkey would like to wipe Armenia off the map and create a corridor of the Turkic nations. So Turkey will connect with Azerbaijan, which will connect with Turkmenistan and the other stans. And it creates a pan-Turan, pan-Turkic corridor at the expense of this very ancient culture and nation called Armenia. And that's what they would like to do. And I can assure you that Russia would not like to see this happen. Despite whatever relationship exists between Russia and Armenia at present, Russia would not like to see Turkey make inroads in this region, which has traditionally been within Russia's sphere of influence. So yeah, so the world doesn't care. So look, people like to virtue signal that we believe in justice, we believe in freedom, we believe in helping the oppressed and all that. That only works when it serves their agenda. When it comes to a nation like Armenia, which is of no interest or utility to them, and they will just keep quiet about that. What about Tibet? Tibet has been brutalized and destroyed by China, and nobody says a word about Tibet. But Gaza, Gaza, Gaza. Yeah. Hypocrites of the first order, all these people. Okay, user Churchill apparently says, is the Ukraine war going to end soon? Well, it's anybody's guess when the Ukraine war will end. Right now, it is progressing at a very slow pace because of the technological changes that we have seen in warfare. So, if you look at the lines on the map on a week to week basis, they are changing very, very slowly. Recently, there have been Russian offensives. Let's go to the map once again. So, we're gonna go to the map and we're gonna look at Ukraine. So, recently, there's been a Russian offensive in the Kharkiv region. Kharkiv is this city over here, which is not very far from Belgorod in Russia, very close to the Russian border. But overall, it's been very slow progress, and the reason for this slow progress is because there are the entire battlefield environment has changed so much. There are all these cheap, extremely inexpensive drones that can take out tanks, and then people, I mean, nations like Russia, etc., have been forced to very rapidly innovate and put all kinds of contraptions on top of their tanks. But the effect of all of these changes, of these tremendous minefields, of these loitering munitions, of these anti-personnel drones, of these anti-tank drones, and whatever else, the cumulative effect of all of this has been that on a good day you will advance 10 kilometers in your offensive. On a good day, 10 kilometers is a great day. Actually, typically it's a kilometer or two, so everything is proceeding at a very slow pace because of the extreme lethality of the battlefield environment. It's almost like you've gone back to the First World War. You remember this? I mean, I'm sure you most of you don't know, but this First World War was this protracted, long, slow war kind of thing with trench warfare, and you're seeing similar things today in Ukraine. So, because of the technological innovations that have come in and which are now becoming part of 21st century warfare, we are seeing very slow movements on the battlefronts. And based on that, it looks like this could be a war that could drag on for a long period of time, or Russia could end it next week if they just choose to use their air power, because they haven't used their air power. They can flatten Ukraine tomorrow if they wish. They have that much air power and missile power, but they don't want to do that. But so it depends to be. It remains to be seen what course of action Mr. Putin takes. But I can assure you of one thing. I mean, for the past 2-3 years, there have been this constant propaganda which Indians and others have bought into, that Russia is losing, that Bakhmut was a disaster for Russia. Bakhmut had no strategic relevance. Russia has lost 300,000 personnel. The Ukrainians are winning. One Ukrainian fighter pilot took out 78 Russian Sukhois. All this nonsense has been constantly spewed out. Putin is dying. Putin has cancer. Putin has some other disease. It's just a matter of months now. They have been saying this for years, since 2022 February. I assure you, this war, whenever it ends, is going to end on Russia's terms. Russia is going to win this war. So that's what's going to happen. When it happens, when it's going to happen, I cannot really tell you. I am not in the business of making predictions. I analyze probabilities. I use a quantum mechanical approach, a probabilistic approach, not a deterministic approach. Okay, Geopolitical Dubey says, does Russia want Prime Minister Modi to remain in power? I think the right question, the right way to frame this question is, how beneficial is it for Russia if Mr. Modi remains in power, and how beneficial is it for Russia if Mr. Modi doesn't remain in power and some coalition government comes to power in India? What are the pros and cons? And let's also throw China into the mix. So look, Mr. Putin and Mr. Modi get along very well. They understand each other very well. They are both very practical and pragmatic leaders. They both prioritize their own national interest. And that's the best approach when it comes to international relations. I will prioritize my national interest. You prioritize your national interest. Now let's talk. I'm going to talk from a selfish perspective. You talk from a selfish perspective. From your side, from my side, I'll do it from my side. And let's see if we are able to discover any convergence of interests. And if there is a convergence of interests, we're going to work together in those matters. That is the best way to do geopolitics and international relations. It is respectful towards each other, and it is mutually beneficial. And that's what both Mr. Modi and Mr. Putin do, right? And obviously, when it comes to India and Russia, we have almost no bone of contention anywhere. We have no disputes anywhere. We have no such problems anywhere. And we almost have strategic alignment on almost everything. Even when it comes to China, the Russians are no friends of China. China is a problem for Russia, a gigantic problem for Russia in the long run. And Russia would very much like India to emerge as a major power so that it offsets China. And will a weak, miserable coalition government in 2024 in India, if it happens, will that be beneficial for Russia? It obviously won't be beneficial for Russia. So Russia, from the if you look at the logic of pure strategy, it makes sense for Russia to want Mr. Modi to return to power, to remain in power, right? So yeah, Russia would very much want Mr. Modi to remain in power. Now, what about China? What about China? Would China like Mr. Modi to lose the election? And would China want to see a weak coalition government come to power in India? What about that? Let's look at it rationally and logically. China understands Mr. Modi. They have been dealing with Mr. Modi for the past 10 years. And obviously, Mr. Modi and this current Indian government is a problem for China, because in the past 10 years, India has risen so much, grown so much economically, and India has adopted a very strong, uncompromising, and hardline approach when it comes to Chinese aggression on the border. And India has given back as good as it gets. And that's what caused the Galwan clash, which was a symptom of China's nervousness and all the other clashes on the border. But India has put its money where its mouth is, and it's been building infrastructure and all that. So it's a huge problem for China. When you had a soft and weak and useless government in India, it was great for China. And now you have this government of Mr. Modi. So obviously, it's a huge problem for China. So does China want Mr. Modi to lose the election? Well, I would say no. Despite this, I think Mr. Xi Jinping would prefer Mr. Modi to stay in power. Why is that? Here's why. Imagine a ridiculously stupid and hypothetical scenario in which a weak coalition government of 78 party coalition comes to power in 24. Okay, imagine that impossible scenario. Now, if you know what political parties these are and what their leaders are like, you will see that there is a very strong external influence in there. External as in external to India. And it's not a Chinese influence. It's a Western influence. So if such a government comes to power in India, it's going to be very strongly pro-West. Now, does China want a very strongly pro-West government to appear in India? No. At least Mr. Modi has a very strongly independent foreign policy. He is not influenced by the West. Right? So that is actually beneficial for China. But a government which may be weak but which is very strongly pro-West is a danger for China. It's going to be alarm bells for China if that happens. So despite their issues with Mr. Modi, I think Mr. Xi Jinping and the Chinese would actually like Mr. Modi to come back to power in 2024. And that's obviously one hopes what's going to happen. Okay, Anand V 1622 says, what will happen if China attacks Taiwan? There's news coming out that the Chinese naval ships are surrounding Taiwan. They're doing naval drills and exercises in the South China Sea. If they attack Taiwan, they will be sanctioned by the United States and other countries that there are the minions and vassals of the US, and the Chinese economy might very well get hit. They're not like Russia. Russia has everything. Russia has an autarky, but China also has Iran. They have they import oil and gas from Iran. So what's going to be the situation like? So the first question is, will China attack Taiwan? Once again, we go back to our best tool, which is the map. So we have China and we have the Champa Sea, which is erroneously called the South China Sea. And we have the island of Taiwan over here. And then we have various Japanese islands near Taiwan. The closest one is Yonaguni. And right now, the situation is such that the Chinese Navy, the People's Enslavement Navy, People's, sorry, Liberation Navy, has encircled Taiwan, and they are conducting various military drills and exercises in conjunction with the People's Enslavement Air Force. Oh, sorry, People's Liberation Air Force, the Chinese Air Force. So that's the situation right now. And some analysts are saying, they are claiming that the date of the invasion is sometime in July, in June or July. So in a month or two from now, the Chinese will invade Taiwan. Uh, that's what some people are saying. All right. So that's the current situation. Taiwan is under a lot of stress because it's been completely encircled by the Chinese, who are conducting all these drills and military exercises all around Taiwan. And Taiwan is essentially, it feels like it's under a state of siege. Siege. It is besieged by the Chinese. So what's going to happen? Will the Chinese go ahead and invade Taiwan? Uh, I could be wrong here, but I think it is improbable that it will happen this year. Eventually, Taiwan is going to face an existential crisis. Eventually. But will it be June, July? Will it be sometime this year? Probably not. I obviously can be wrong. I could be wrong on this, but I think it is too early for the China to make such a move. I think Taiwan is a very well defended fortress like island. It has a porcupine strategy. It will cause tremendous damage to Chinese assets, to the Chinese Navy, Air Force, and to anybody who tries to actually turn up on the beaches, amphibious landings, or whatever. It's going to cause tremendous damage to China. And even if the Chinese somehow are able to take Taiwan, it will be what's called a Pyrrhic victory. Pyrrric, Pyrrhic victory, which means a hollow victory. What they will have conquered will be a burnt out shell of an island. Everything will be destroyed. TSMC will be destroyed. Everything of value will be destroyed. So then what will they get? A burnt out shell of an island. And at what cost? So I think the Chinese are not there yet. It is believed in highly placed circles that President Xi Jinping has given a deadline of 2027 to his military, to his armed forces, for being completely prepared, completely ready for an invasion of Taiwan uh, at short notice. So by 2027, they are supposed to become completely ready and capable of doing this. We're in 24. I mean, in case that is true. Obviously, we don't have any documentary evidence of that, but it is believed in very highly placed places that 2027 is the deadline. So I don't think it's going to happen now, but let's see. Who knows? I mean, if somebody miscalculates and orders an invasion, all hell could break loose. So in case the Chinese in case they invade Taiwan, what's going to happen? First of all, the Americans will come to the aid of Taiwan, and it's not just the Americans who will come to the aid. It's going to be, well, Japan will definitely get involved. Japan is a puppet of the US. It is a vassal state of the US. There's more than 120, 130 military bases, American bases on Japanese soil. Japan is more of a fortress than Taiwan itself, especially when it comes to the southern islands, Okinawa, etc., which is not far from Taiwan at all. And then obviously we also have South Korea, which is another US fortress. So in case there's an invasion of Taiwan, you could see activity. You could see the US get involved. You could see Japan get involved. You could see South Korea get involved. If South Korea gets involved, then North Korea will get activated, and this could very rapidly run out of control. So that's what could happen. The Americans will also impose sanctions on China, which will also hurt the US economy very badly, because the US and Chinese economies are joined at the hip. You cannot damage one without damaging the other. The US gets almost everything from China, cheap manufacturing and all. Not so cheap anymore, but yeah. And yeah, I know that China has Iran, from which it gets important oil and gas supplies, but have you considered where those supplies come from? So when it comes to China, it gets a lot of supplies from the Persian Gulf, from Iran, also from Saudi Arabia, etc., etc., etc. All of that comes through the sea route. And where does all that come from? From this strait, the Strait of Malacca, this tremendously narrow strait. And if you want to go through the Strait of Malacca, where do you have to pass through? You have to pass through the Andaman and Nicobar Island chain, right? So that will be a problem for China. India holds the key to Chinese good behavior, actually, when it comes to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, because of India's capability, very strong capability of being able to blockade the Malacca Strait. India can choke off that strait, interdict all traffic at will, and not just through visible means, but invisible means. All right. So let me not elaborate. So yeah, I don't think China is in a position to do any of this right now, but who knows? Happy Faces 228 says in CBSE Class 12th NCERT English book, there's a chapter called The Tiger King. He was an Indian king. In this chapter, the author has said that the Tiger King grew from an English nanny, watched nothing but English movies, and drank the milk of only English cows, like all the other kings of that time. I don't understand, why were the kings mentally colonized? It's understandable for normal people. Didn't they have any self-respect? Okay, it's a good question, by the way. Okay, we have to understand what happened, what changed in 1857. 1857 was the great war of independence that almost all of India participated in, and because of various reasons, we ended up losing the war of independence, and the British were able to defeat the various Indian kings and kingdoms that had risen up against them. And then that was the end of the rule of the East India Company, and then the British crown took over ruling India from that time. And there were tremendous reprisals, reprisals against Indians. At least 10 million Indians were killed in the decade after 1857 in acts of revenge. Okay, that's what the British did in India. Now, that's not all that happened in 1857. The British were able to somehow win the war in 1857. And then what happens? What happened after the British won the war? They killed off every single royal lineage that had fought against them, wiped them off, killed them off, killed the kings, killed the queens, killed the children, killed any relative who had a pretense to the throne. And then what they would do is they would take some distant, far off relation of that king or queen and install that individual as a puppet on the crown. And these were the princely states that we know of. So every single king or queen in a princely state in India who was still nominally in power after 1857 was a puppet of the British. Now, it doesn't mean they were all traitors. Some of them understood that the only way to serve their people, to serve their subjects, was to compromise and accept the suzerainty of the British. So they had to accept a British political agent in their court, which meant that they were no longer independent or sovereign kingdoms. They could not really maintain any armed forces. They would have collectors on their territory. Even today, we have collectors, district collectors. What do they collect? What do today's district collectors collect? In the old days, in the 19th century, 20th century, during the British occupation, they collected Indian wealth. Obviously, it was extortion. It was the drainage of India's wealth out and resources out of India. That's what collectors were for. So these princely states, they would have collectors who would give money straight to the British treasury, and they would have political agents who would monitor all of their moves and ensure that everything went as per British instructions. So all of these kings, queens, princely states, kingdoms, whatever, first class, second class, third class, whatever, they all were British puppets. Some of them were not collaborators. If you look at the what's the temple? Sri Anantapadmanabha Swami temple, the one where you have trillions of dollars worth of gold and jewelry. I mean, that princely state, whoever was running that, they did not allow the British to know what was in the temple. Otherwise, it would all have been taken away. So many temples were drained of their wealth in this manner. Trillions of dollars worth of treasure in today's money from each temple. So the Sri Anantapadmanabha Swami temple today has incredible amounts of wealth in just one temple, more than the GDP of most nations. Okay, and it is thanks to the rulers of that princely state that the British did not get wind of this. So some of them were actually good people, but most of them were simply collaborators or puppets installed by the British, people who did not have any actual claim or legitimacy to the throne. There are many examples. I will not name these examples because it's going to offend and upset a lot of people. Lots of feelings will get hurt if I name them. Okay, but you can do your own research. You can do your own due diligence. So all of these people eventually became anglicized. They had to send their children to study in the UK. They had to have English nannies and everything English. And if you look at their descendants today, they are all more British than the British. So overall, slowly they became mentally colonized and they lost all dignity and all self-respect. Most of them, not all of them, most of them, if not many of them. Okay. Uh, and yes, that is what happened. And if you look at the way the British destroyed the lineage of various kings, for example, how the manner in which they destroyed the lineage of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, then you will understand how what happened in those days. So yeah, so it's no surprise that these Indian kings, many of them, were more English than the English themselves. Rodrajit Sarkar says in the era of the Cold War, there was a significant rise of Arab nationalism in the Arabic countries. Then why didn't the formation of a united Arab country take place, even though a significant portion of people backed the idea? Was it because of internal friction or foreign intervention? Is a good question once again. Excellent question. Okay, let's go back to the map to put everything into context. So we're talking about the Arabic region, the larger Arabian region beyond the Arabian Peninsula. So we have Saudi Arabia today. We have the various Arabic nations: Yemen, Oman, UAE, Iraq. Well, okay, let's call Iraq Arabic. Jordan, Syria, Israel, and Egypt. These are the nations that we are talking about. So in the 1950s, etc., 50s, 60s, you had very strong leaders in the region at various points in time. I'm not saying they were all contemporaries of each other, but you had leaders at various points in time, like Nasser in Egypt. You had Saddam Hussein al-Tikriti in Iraq. You had somebody like Muammar al-Gaddafi in Libya, which is another Arabic nation that we are talking about. Today it's an Arabic nation more or less, and so on. So you had these leaders who were strong men, who were very big nationalists. Many of them were, all three of these guys that I mentioned were secularist leaders. They understood the dangers of radicalism and all that, and they ran their countries in a remarkably secular manner. And there was this sense of nationalism, pan-Arabic nationalism among the peoples of this region. But the problem is that this region was under the very strong influence of the two superpowers. Okay, in a variety of ways. The two superpowers, which is the US and the USSR. We're talking about the 1950s, 1960s, and so on. So there was the Cold War was going on, and there was great power competition, superpower competition in this region for influence and control. And various Arab nations were under the influence of one or the other of these two superpowers. So there is that. So that is one factor that prevented the formation of a long-lasting united Arab country. Then you had kingdoms like Saudi Arabia and kingdoms like Jordan, which which did not want a united Arabic nation, and they were deeply mistrustful of people like Nasser and Saddam Hussein, etc., whom they saw as socialists and who they saw as threats to their own survival and legitimacy of their kingdoms. There was that, and then there was the inequality, economic inequality between the nations, like the Arabic nations. Like, for example, Saudi Arabia was extremely rich in oil, Iraq was extremely rich in oil, but some of the other countries like Libya, for example, like Egypt, Syria, for example, were not that rich in oil. So if you have a united nation, then why would you give away your wealth to those who, well, in your eyes, don't deserve it? There was that. So there were multiple reasons for this. And obviously, there was a short lived experiment of the United Arab Republic. I think it was from 58 to 61 or something like that. You can look up the dates. I don't remember dates. I don't memorize dates. Somewhere around 1958 and 1961, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So there was a short lived experiment of a United Arab Republic, which comprised Egypt and Syria. And obviously, it did not last long. So yeah, because of these factors, because of all these reasons, great power politics, superpower competition, mistrust from Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and all these factors, that this could not really happen. Yeah, that's the answer. Okay, Rodrajit Sarkar has asked a lot of good questions. I've been able to take only a few of those, but I like the questions. Keep asking. So the question is, how did the Champa kingdom of Vietnam fall? All right. It is a kingdom that existed in present day Vietnam, the present day Vietnam region, but it was not a Vietnamese kingdom. All right. Firstly, there's that. Now, secondly, where was it located? We have to orient ourselves and look at the map. So we know where India is. Let's go eastwards. Eastwards, we go to Southeast Asia. We cross Brahmadesh, which is Myanmar. We cross Suvarnabhumi, which is Thailand, and then we come to Vietnam. And Champa was located in the southern part of Vietnam. So you have this, uh, as you can see on the map, you have Vietnam, you have Cambodia, you have Laos, uh, and you have the so-called South China Sea, which was historically the Champa Sea. So the Champa kingdom was also called Champapura. It was an Indianized kingdom, located in what is now central Vietnam and South Vietnam. Okay, that's where it was located. And it was a very long lived kingdom from approximately the 2nd century AD to the 16th, 17th, almost 18th century AD. That's how long this kingdom lasted. And it was known for its very rich culture. Okay, very rich culture, Hindu culture. To some extent, there was some Buddhism as well. So Hindu religious influences, Buddhist religious influences later on, and tremendous achievements in architecture, in culture, and in maritime trade. So it was established sometime in the 2nd century AD, and its capital was Singapore in present day this region, central Vietnam, Quang Ngai, or somewhere around that region. Okay, that's where the capital of this kingdom was, and then it underwent a long period of expansion and great prosperity, and its territorial extent grew significantly, and it had multiple capitals at various points in time, and it there was tremendous cultural and architectural achievements, the construction of lots of Hindu temples. You can find lots of Sanskrit inscriptions in this region, and you will find Shaivite temples, you will find Shivalingas, Ganesha Murtis, and so much more. But eventually, as with all kingdoms, there was pressure from outside, from the Dai Viet kingdom, the Vietnamese kingdom, and the Champa kingdom began to fragment into smaller principalities. Then in the 13th, 14th century, the great three Kublai Khan invaded this region, the grandson of the conqueror Chinggis Khan, and the invasion was not successful. The Mongol invasion of Kublai Khan was not successful, but the conflict, it drained the resources of the Champa kingdom and further weakened the kingdom. So this was in the 13th or 14th century, the Mongol invasion, and then because of the pressure coming from the expanding Dai Viet kingdom, etc., uh, the Champa kingdom kept on losing territory. And by the late 15th century, early 16th century, Champa was a significantly smaller kingdom. And then you had an invasion by the Dai Viet, and they captured the capital, which was Vijaya, and destroyed much of the infrastructure of Champa. And whatever was left of Champa persisted till the 17th or 18th century, and eventually it was fully absorbed into the Vietnamese kingdom. Okay, so that's essentially what happened. So that is how the Champa kingdom of Vietnam fell, but it was a tremendously rich culturally kingdom. It is renowned for its Hindu kingdom, Hindu temples. The temples at Mison, it's a temple complex, and there are other ones as well. There is Po Nagar and so on. Beautiful architecture, beautiful designs of these temples, influenced by Indian style, Indian architectural style, Khmer architectural styles, and indigenous styles. So very syncretic, beautiful culture. Lots of carvings, beautiful iconography, sculptures. Sculptures of Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, and Champa was a very significant trading kingdom, maritime kingdom. It had a huge navy. It dominated the South China Sea, which was called the Champa Sea. At a certain point in time, the Champa kingdom was a vassal of the Chola Empire as well. They had tremendous shipbuilding capabilities. They had advanced shipbuilding techniques, which led to its prowess in trade and naval warfare. And obviously, it Champa played a crucial role in spreading Indian culture and religion and art and architecture and whatever else across Southeast Asia. You find lots of Sanskrit inscriptions in this region, which tell you about, which give us historical and cultural insights into how this kingdom was governed, what the society was like, and so on and so forth. So today, the legacy of this kingdom, it's preserved in the architectural ruins, the cultural artifacts, the sculptures, uh, the monuments, and various historical records. But today, the Champa Sea is called the South China Sea. And this name was given by the idiotic Westerners. And they actually did China a huge favor by doing this. Well, yeah, there you have it. Another question by Rodrajit Sarkar. Is it true that India culturally dominated China for over 2000 years without sending a single soldier across the border? Or is it that one of those India never invaded anybody for 2000 years propaganda? No, India, it's not true that India did not invade any kingdom or any other country for 2000 years. India has been just like any other nation, any other kingdom, any other empire, culture, whatever civilization. India has also done its fair share of invading and conquering. But India did not ever invade China. So, once again, let's go to the map because that is what helps us understand. So, today's China is not historical China. This is the greatest extent of China that you have ever seen, what we are seeing on the map right now. See, there is something called Tibet, Bhutadesh, which has been absorbed by China in the 1950s, and India allowed this to happen. There is something called Xinjiang, East Turkestan, which has never been Chinese, which is currently part of China. And then there is much more. This Inner Mongolia, half of Mongolia is currently occupied by China. The whole of Manchuria is occupied by China, and so on and so forth. All right. So China currently is much larger than what historically it was. The Great Wall of China is somewhere in the middle of China, and that was actually the extent of China. Now, uh, India did not ever send a soldier into China, but India sent trade caravans to China, trading missions to China, and these trade missions, because of the genius of our emperor Kanishka. What Kanishka did was that he sent lots and lots of trade missions to China to trade with the Chinese. But with each trade mission, he sent scholars as well. So you would have Buddhist monks and Brahmin scholars who would go along with these trade missions to China with Indian texts, sutras, and whatnot. And eventually, the Chinese started sending ambassadors to Indian kings, requesting and pleading with Indian kings to send scholars to translate various Sanskrit texts and sutras, etc., into the Chinese language. And and you had many great scholars who became very renowned in China. One of the examples is Kumara Jiva. I mean, various Chinese kings fought each other. They went to war with each other so that they could have Kumara Jiva in their court. That's one example. And the Kumara Jiva was the son of an Indian Kashmiri father and a princess from the Xinjiang region, from the Kucha region, I believe. Uh, he was one of the great scholars. One of the great scholars. There were other great scholars like Buddha Bhadra, like Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is very famously the founder of Kung Fu. He was the chief monk in the Shaolin temple And he is the guy who taught this martial art to the Chinese, which is now called Kung Fu. It was an Indian martial art. So China has been deeply, deeply uh, influenced by Indian culture, inculturated and civilized by India. China, even today, has the largest practicing Buddhist population in the world, whether you realize it or not. And there's tremendous Indian influence in China. The Chinese government today tries to minimize the visibility of this because it is very inconvenient, isn't it? This fact that there was zero Chinese influence in India, but there was tremendous Indian influence in China. The question is, why was there no 2000 years? The two cultures, the two civilizations were interacting. Okay. And for 2000 years, there is tremendous Indian influence in China in so many ways. It's now become part of Chinese culture and lifestyle. Okay, that's how deep it is, the Indian influence in China. But how come there was no reverse influence into India? There is not an ounce of Chinese cultural influence in India. Why is that? So that tells you which was the greater cultural power, right? And that's what is an inconvenient fact that the Chinese don't like. Anyhow, yeah, there you have it. Balram Putin says, very recently I came across information that opened my eyes. The average Indian subcontinental life expectancy was around 30 years during the British Raj. Same for the African colonies that were very rich cultures at one time. Surprisingly, when I saw the so-called Western nations, their average life expectancy at that time was around 60 years. Then I concluded that the oppressors lived a good life with their people and the victims lost their lives. Still, some idiots say that the colonial era was necessary for India. It is something that was a great boon for India. I'm talking about the colonial era. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a great data point that you have mentioned. When the British left India in 1947, the average life expectancy in India was 31 years. The average person would live 31 years and then die. If you live to 41, you are very lucky. Imagine the average person dies at the age of 31. And then you have people like, all the great historians and scholars and whatnot who say that the British rule was the best thing that happened to India. They gave us the Indian language, they gave us railways, they gave us education because Indians had no education of their own. They gave us the judiciary because Indians had no judiciary. They gave us the rule of law because Indians were barbarians who lived and jumped off trees, right? The truth is that the British occupation of India 250 years was the most disastrous thing that happened to India. They completely deindustrialized India. India was the world's first fully industrialized civilization. India had industries in every domain you can imagine. India made the world's largest and most powerful ships. Today, you won't believe it because you haven't seen any of those ships. When Vasco da Gama reached East Africa, he thought he had the most powerful and best ship in the world. And then he saw an Indian ship which was like 4 times the size of his ship. And that was an average Indian ship in East Africa. Indians had a presence in East Africa for centuries, for thousands of years. India was a fully industrialized civilization. We had industries in every field, every domain you can imagine. The British completely deindustrialized India and destroyed India's economy. They drained everything of value out of India. The railways they built were the infrastructure of occupation and extraction. The judiciary they brought in was designed to serve them, the British. The education system they imposed on India after destroying India's indigenous system was designed to mentally enslave India, and it has worked brilliantly. They brought in Christian missionaries to destroy India's culture, and that is still at work right now. And they destroyed India's population through hundreds of artificially created famines. And by the time they left, the average life expectancy in India was 31 years. And these geniuses, they say that the British rule was the best thing that happened in India. Incredible that we have such traitors and Gangadins among us. The problem is, many of us believe this nonsense because our teachers teach us this stuff. Lord Ripon was so nice. Lord William Bentinck was a great reformer. Lord whatever else did whatever else. The best thing that happened in India was the reforms brought in by the British. Because before the British came in, Indians were barbarians, right? So that's what we are taught, and that's what most of us believe. And when one says this, one gets a lot of abuse and pushback. So yeah, idiots, absolute idiots. I mean, learn how to think critically, will ya? Okay. Vishnu says, where can I read more about this? This quote, the British chief of 1921 India census said, we pigeonholed everyone, and if we could not find a caste for them, we labeled them with hereditary occupation. We deplore the caste system and its effect on social and economic problems, but we are largely responsible for the system we deplore. And Vishnu says, I can't find this quote anywhere. Okay, let me help you out. So let me put something on the screen. Okay, this is a research paper. It's a research paper. Let's remove this and let's look here. I'm going to read this out. This was posted in July 2014 by Ajay Varghese from Stanford University and Emmanuel Teitelbaum from the George Washington University. It was written in 2014. Abstract. This paper explores the relationship between British colonial rule and contemporary conflict in India. We argue that colonialism generated deep-seated grievances among tribal and low-caste communities that have ultimately resulted in armed conflict in rural areas. We identify three mechanisms that have given rise to conflict. First, the British exacerbated land inequality in rural areas by granting land ownership rights to zamindars and commandeering forest lands upon which tribal populations rely for sustenance. Second, the British state reified social inequalities in tribal and low caste areas through their systematic categorization and ranking of caste and tribal communities. Finally, the British instituted a new bureaucratic apparatus that cemented these social inequalities through administrative practice, thereby fostering distrust of India's legal system among low caste and tribal groups. The hierarchical, social, and exploitative economic relationships that originated during the British colonial period have had long-term deleterious effects on political stability in the countryside. And the Naxalite conflict and so on and so forth are a consequence of that. Let's take a look at this paper. And I'm going to take some time and read through some of it. And this is very important. Okay? So I'm going to go down here. Okay, it's the paper. You can check it out. Okay. The rise of the British in India in the 18th and 19th centuries initiated a period of widespread peasant revolt throughout the country against the British. Historians have noted that the amount of peasant violence under British rule was considerably more severe than that which had occurred under pre-colonial powers like the Turks, the Mughals. Since historians have written extensively about how colonial rule affected Indian peasants in adverse ways, we do not delve into this here. Instead, we focus on three main mechanisms that led to the deterioration of peasant living conditions. Firstly, new landholding systems. Second, new discriminatory policies against tribals and low castes by the British. And they are today worshipping the British. And third, the introduction of highly undemocratic bureaucratic institutions that were responsible for implementing these discriminatory policies. Okay. So zamindars, the British radically disrupted the existing land holding systems of India when they became the paramount rulers of the subcontinent. Their new policies led to an increase in the power of zamindars. Zamindars had existed in the pre-British period, but were intermediaries of ruler. They were revenue agents and did not have a proprietary right on the land. However, the British administrators, drawing on the horrific English model, instituted a new system of land tenure in which zamindars were given private property rights. This was done with the hope of incentivizing them to make reinvestments in their land, but in effect, it led to higher levels of land inequality and social unrest. Under the new system, peasants became tenants at will and could be displaced from the land for any reason. Consequently, land began to concentrate in the hands of the zamindars. So that's how Indians lost their land. Today, nobody has land of their own. In the United Provinces, modern day Uttar Pradesh, for example, 100% of the land by independence was owned by less than 5% of the population. Other such examples they are giving. This displacement led to a massive peasant insurrection in the 20th century. Mopla rebellion, which had religious reasons. Related economic forces induced peasants to substitute cash crops for produce, resulting in an increased prevalence of famines. This was done deliberately to create these artificial famines. An estimated third of the population of Bengal perished during the brutal famine of 1770, for example, and so on and so forth. The second major change during the British period was the introduction of several new policies that discriminated against tribals and low castes. The British instituted discrimination against tribals and low castes. It was not inherent in Indian society. Do you read this? The British instituted these policies that discriminated against tribals and low castes and exacerbated and cemented social inequalities that had been in place prior to the arrival of the British. For example, the British instituted new criminal tribes legislation that pertained to certain tribes with a history of criminal behavior. This legislation criminalized every member of a so-called criminal tribe, including those who had never committed a crime. Tribes were highly stigmatized, prevented from traveling freely, and often jailed for not reporting their movements. It was noted that it may be said that a much larger percentage of these tribes were led into criminality by giving them the stigma of criminal tribes. The British also disrupted tribal life in other more subtle ways, such as the introduction of a monetary economy to replace a barter system and the influx of Christian missionaries into tribal areas. The British likewise implemented policies that reified the social inequalities inherent in India's caste system. Though caste existed prior to the British rule, colonialism, and more specifically the desire on the part of the colonial administrators to simplify and systematize a complex and foreign society, led to an emphasis on caste that was previously unknown in India. The first census conducted in 1871 attempted to place thousands of diverse Jati groups into a four-tiered Varna structure, artificially done by the British, promoting widespread caste antagonism, especially among those designated as so-called backward or untouchable castes by the British. By the British. By the British. Read properly. W.C. Plowden, Caste Census Commissioner of India, noted that the British would simply designate as untouchables those whom the popular voice designates as inferior. Do you understand who designated people as untouchables? The British. In 1901, the census began to rank caste groups. L. Middleton, Director of Census Operations for Punjab, laid out the deleterious effects of these new policies. Caste in itself was rigid among the higher castes, but malleable among the lower. We pigeonholed everyone by caste, and if we could not find a true caste for them, we labeled them with the name of a hereditary occupation. We deplore the caste system and its effects on social and economic problems, but we, the British, are largely responsible for the system we pretend to deplore. I'm going to stop here. I've been saying this for a long, long time, but nobody bothers to do some research and find the truth. That's why I read all this out. Find this article. Let me put that on the screen once again. I'll put the title out there. At least you can Google the title. At least that much you can do. Colonialism and Armed Conflict in the Indian Countryside by Ajay Varghese and Emmanuel Teitelbaum. Read it if you have any interest in knowing what happened to your country and to your society and how it has been destroyed by the foreigners. Next question. Okay. Padmavati Saraswati says, you've never answered any of my questions. Don't ignore it again. Okay, we're taking it now. I want to know about the details of how ancient India was a democratic nation. And how could have ancient India been a democracy if a king's son only had the right to succeed his father? Okay. Was ancient India a democratic nation? Firstly, the nation-state system came into existence in the 16th, 17th centuries, somewhere around that time, with the Treaty of Westphalia. And today we have nation-states, but some of these are still monarchies. So India historically was not a nation. India historically was a civilization. India still is a civilization. Today, India is a civilization state, but it is force-fitted into the mold of a nation state. First, that is the first point. India has always been a civilization in various forms, a single empire, a collection of kingdoms. It's a cyclical process. Now, when it comes to democracy, we are taught, you, the lady who's asking this question, would have been taught that democracy originated in Greece. Greece is the mother of democracy, right? That's what everybody tells us. That's what the Western historians would like us to believe. let's try and understand the nature of Greek democracy 2,500 years before today. Around that time, democracy apparently emerges in Greece. Yes. In those days, you had city states in Greece. You had Athens, you had Thebes, you had Sparta, and so on and so forth. City states. And over there, apparently, you had democracy. You could elect your officials and blah, blah, blah. Now, the question I would like to ask is, who could vote and who could stand for election? All right? Who was allowed to vote and who was allowed to stand for election? First point to be noted, this society, the Greek society, was a slave-owning society. A significant percentage of the population was slaves. They were Greeks, but they were slaves. Now, if a significant percentage of the population, even if it's, let's say, 3% or 5%, if a percentage of the population is slaves and they don't have the right to vote or stand in elections, do you call that a democracy? That's point number one. Second, women could not vote or stand for election. That's 50% gone in this democracy. Thirdly, peasants could not vote or stand for election. Only the nobility could vote or stand for election. The nobility would have been what, 3%, 5% of the population at most? So in this so-called democracy, only 5% at best of the population could either vote or stand for election. And if you take the women out, it's just 2.5%. Is that a democracy? Nobody will raise questions about the so-called democracy in Greece, but then we will ask questions about India. In the US, the US, they say the US is the oldest democracy. And the Americans claim India is the largest democracy and the US is the oldest democracy. When the United States was formed, did black people have the right to vote or stand for election? No, no, no. No, 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 no. They were slaves. Did the true indigenous natives of America, the Native Americans, have the right to stand for election or vote? No, 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 no. Read the American Declaration of Independence. It calls them savages. No, no, no. They could not vote. Then, among the whites, the occupiers and invaders, could women vote? No, 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 no. Women could not vote. But America is democracy. And among the white males, could people who did not own property vote? No, 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 no. But America is a democracy. What a goddamn joke it is. Switzerland? You have heard of Switzerland, the small little nation? There are parts of Switzerland where women could not vote until the 21st century. I kid you not, I'm not joking. Look it up. Learn how to use Google search. In certain parts of Switzerland, until the 21st century, women did not have the right to vote. But nobody raises questions about Switzerland. Now let's talk about India. We had voting in India back in the day, like really, really long ago, thousands of years ago. But we had kings and emperors. So India was a hybrid system. At the top, you had hereditary kingdoms and hereditary dynasties. At the bottom, at the grassroots level, the people in the cities, towns, villages, etc., would vote to elect their own officials who would deliver governance and have a voice in the year of the king. That's how it was. India was always a hybrid system. And there was another form of democracy in the sense that kings had a council of advisors who were elected, and they would advise the king as to what to do, and the king typically had to listen to what they had to say. So that's the kind of system we had in India. It was a hybrid system. It was democracy at the grassroots and lower levels. It was hereditary monarchy, either kingdoms or empires, at the top. That's the form of democracy we had. Show me any democracy in the world that is perfect. No, you won't find it. There is no such thing as pure democracy. Pure democracy is the rule of the mob. You don't want that. Is the US a democracy today? Is the US a democracy today? We know we know that China is not a democracy. It's a single party state, single party nation. The Chinese Communist Party is the only party that is allowed to exist. We know North Korea is not a democracy. There's only one party and one family that rules. Is the US a democracy? How many political parties have any representation anywhere in the nation? Two parties. The US is a two-party state. Two-party state. Every agenda has to be fitted forcefully into one of the agendas of one of the two parties. And both the parties have the same corrupt dealings with the oligarchs, with the military industrial complex, with the whatever else. And both the parties have the same foreign policy. Okay. And where's the political party for the Hispanic people? Where's the political party for the Native American people? Where's the political party for the black LGBTQ people? In India, we have a political party for everything. We have thousands of political parties. That's a real democracy today. So let's not question our own history. There is no such thing as a perfect democracy. India is not a perfect democracy today. Our constitution has never been ratified by the people of India. You call this democracy? The US Constitution hasn't been ratified by the people of the US. When it was written, the Constitution of the US, it was put to a vote, but only wealthy white land-owning males were allowed to vote, which means that the vast majority of the population of the US could not vote. That's not ratification. It's undemocratic. So there is no real democracy in the world. Democracy is an illusion. That's my point. All right? That's how it goes. Might is right is the way the world actually works. You gotta be realistic and practical and get used to the facts of life. Next question by Agam Pratap Singh. Okay, the Persian and Indian civilizations have been known to have good relations, to have had good relations with each other during the medieval era. I mean, much before the medieval era. The medieval era is the second millennium AD, which is not good relations. But yeah, historically, going back the past 3,000 years, before the Islamization of Persia, we had excellent relations with Persia. So that's what the point is being made here. So what about the Sasanian invasion of the Kushan Empire and the Achaemenid invasion of the Gandhara region? Excellent question. So I'm sure those of you who watch this show regularly would know that I have said this all the time, that India and Persia have always had the best of relations until the Arabic conquest of Persia. And before the Arabic conquest of Persia, India and Persia never went to war, and Persia always expanded militarily westwards, but never eastwards towards India. Then what about the Sasanian invasion of the Kushan Empire, which happened in the 3rd, 4th century AD? And what about the Achaemenid invasion of the Gandhar region around 400-500 BC? What about that? Excellent question. Excellent question. Like it. I like it very much. So let's take a look at the map to understand what we're talking about. So was I right? Was I wrong? I mean, that's a very intelligent question to ask. It allows me to clarify what I have been saying, because this is an important point that you're raising. So, okay, before I put the map on, we know the map of India and Iran, no big deal. It's no big news there. Let me show you something called the Bhagasthana inscription, the Behistun inscription. Let us discover that. And I'm sure I've done this at some point in time in the past 2-3 years, but let me do it again. Let me read this out for you. This is the Bhagasthana inscription, now called the Behistun inscription. Bhagastan was a town in Persia. It's a site of ancient monuments, including this very famous inscription of the Persian king Darius the Great, who lived in the 6th to 5th centuries BC. Okay, so here's what he writes. I don't know how to read the cuneiform script, but I'll read the transliteration. Okay, he says, Aham Darayavaush Kshayatya Vajraka Kshayatya Kshayathyanam Kshayatya Parshaya Kshayatya Dahunam Vishtaspasya Putra Arsamashya Napa Haksha Manishya Thatiya. He says that I am Darayavaush, the great king, I am the king of kings. I am a Persian king. I am the king of the Dahyus. I am the son of Vishtaspa. I am the grandson of Arshas, and I am an Achaemenid king. It sounds very much like Sanskrit because it was a descendant language of Sanskrit. Now, Darayavaush Kshayathiya Mana Pita Vishtaspa, Vishtaspasya Pita Arshama, Arshamasya Pita Arya Ramana, Arya Ramnasya Pita Chishpisha, Chishpisha Pita Hakshamanisha Tatiya. So he's talking about his lineage. My daddy was Vishtaspa, his daddy was uh, Arshama's daddy was Arya Ramna, Arya Ramna's daddy was Chishpish, and Chishpish's father was Hakshamanish, the great founder of the Achaemenid Empire. And he goes on and on and on about this. So let's look at the next part of the inscription, in which he talks about the kingdoms that he rules. So he's talking about Ahura Mazda gave me all these great boons. I rule Parsa, Uvja, which is Elam, Babirush, which is Babylonia, Ahura, which is Assyria, Arabaya, means the Arabic regions, Mudraya, which is Egypt, Drahaya means the nations by the sea, Sparta means Lydia, Iona means the Yavana nations, Greece, Mada means Media, Armenia means Armenia, Katpatuk means Cappadocia of today's Cappadocia. Parthava means Parthia. Zraka. Hareva means Chorasmia, Saraswati region. It's named after the Saraswati. It doesn't mean the actual Saraswati region. Then you have Uvarasmia means Chorasmia. Bakhtris is Bactria, which is close to Afghanistan. Suguda is close to Afghanistan, and Gandhara itself, and Scythia and other places. So he says that he ruled Gandhara and this region. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. I'll not go and read the whole thing. So Darius ruled Gandhara, Afghanistan. Okay, and he actually came all the way to the river Parushni or something, which one of the rivers in the Sapta Sindhu region. So he kind of had a presence in the Indus Valley. He ruled parts of the Indus Valley. Darius, the first, the great Darius. So there is that. Okay, Darius ruled parts of the Indus Valley, and he ruled Gandhar, which was historically India, Afghanistan. Chandragupta Maurya and the Mauryan Empire took Gandhar back later on. And then we also have the Sasanian invasion of the Kushan Empire. The Kushan Empire, so this is when the Kushan Empire was declining and they no longer had great kings. So the Sasanians, which is another Iranian dynasty, they went to war with the Kushans and took parts of Kushan territories. Much of those territories they took from the Kushans were Central Asia, the Stans, because Kanishka had conquered the Central Asian region from the Aral Sea to the Caspian Sea. Let's put that on the map once again. Map is very important. Sorry, not this. I'll put the map on the screen. Where is map here? So today you don't see much of the Aral Sea, but it exists over here. So that is Kazakhstan, and the Caspian Sea is again Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, etc. So the empire of Kanishka touched the shores of the Caspian Sea and the Aral Sea, and it included parts of Tibet and much of present-day Xinjiang, including the Tarim River Basin region. Gigantic empire Kanishka had conquered. And when the Kushan Empire started declining sometime around the 3rd, 4th century AD, then what happens? Obviously, there's going to be pressure from the neighboring kingdoms. And the Sasanians took over those regions, those Central Asian regions, also Gandhar, I would imagine. Okay? So when a kingdom declines, you will see this natural process in which its neighbors start nibbling away at its borders and start grabbing its territories. It is simply a natural process. In India, when the Gupta Empire started declining, neighboring kingdoms started nibbling away at its territory. When the Chola Empire declined in the southern parts of India, its neighboring kingdoms started nibbling away at its territory and taking over chunks of its territory. And similarly, when the Kushan Empire declined, the Sasanians started taking its territory. That's just a natural process. All right? That happens everywhere. Similarly, during the time of Darius, during the time of the Hakshamanish Empire, there was a period of time when India was politically fragmented. India was politically weak. And there was this absence, this vacuum of power, which somebody had to fill. So the Achaemenids, the Hakshamanish dynasty, they did this. Firstly, under Cyrus and Darius, and later, Cyrus and Darius did that. So it was a natural process that there is an absence of power here. So I need to take over this territory and stabilize it. And obviously, it expands my territory. I can get more resources and wealth and revenue. So why not? So that was a natural process. But you will never see any instance in history where the Persians, before the Arabic conquest, launched an actual invasion of India. Okay? The way they launched invasions of Greece and Anatolia. A proper, well thought out, well planned, well supplied and provisioned military campaign that would last several years. And the objective was to take over all of Greece, all of Anatolia. They never had any campaign like that to take over India or even a part of India. What happened, like the incidents you're mentioning, the Achaemenid invasion of the Gandhar region and the Indus Valley region, and the Sasanian invasion of Kushan Empire, all of that was just natural processes that have throughout history moved the boundaries between empires and kingdoms. Just a natural process. It was never a well thought out invasion. They just expanded as far as they could because there was a decline of power here. But they never said that, okay, let me go and conquer Mathura. Let me go and conquer Patliputra. Never ever did they even imagine doing that. That's the difference. But yeah, excellent question. Excellent question. Okay, Saurabh Badoria says, M.V.N. Krishna Rao claims that an Indian king of the Indus site ruled Egypt and Babylon, according to his decipherment of a seal from the Indus Valley, where he read the king's name is Susaka from Ran of Rajasthan, and he related him to Egyptian king Shishak, descendant of Meshwesh, Masawasa of Indus script he deciphered. And according to him, the names of the cities he ruled in Egypt are also mentioned. What's your view on this? So, M.V.N. Krishna Rao was an Indian historian and probably archaeologist from the 20th century. And he claimed to have deciphered the Saraswati Sindhu script, the so-called Indus Valley script or Harappan script. Now, I'm not sure. I've not looked into this personally, as I've not looked into the alleged decipherment myself. So I'm not sure how right or wrong it is. But clearly, it is not recognized right now as a valid decipherment. So maybe it was not correct. Maybe I'm just saying. I've not seen it myself. And according to his research, apparently he correlated certain names that he found, like the Egyptian king Shishak. He correlated that with a deciphered Indus Valley seal in which there was a king's name Susaka. Well, I don't know how true it is. We should not just dismiss such research out of hand. Maybe there could be some truth to it, but it needs to be investigated thoroughly, properly. Essentially, if it was an Indian king who ruled Egypt, then you would find some Indian artifacts, Indian origin artifacts, some kind of clues in Egypt that would bring forth a link with India. And as far as I know, we haven't found that. It doesn't mean the absence of evidence doesn't prove the evidence of absence, but we do need evidence to legitimize a claim. So as of now, I would say that this claim hasn't been proven true. It doesn't mean it is incorrect, but yeah, that's the situation right now. But we know for a fact that there were connections and contacts between India and Egypt. The Indian Zebu cattle first appear in Egypt around 2000 BC. 2000 BC. So that's during the Saraswati Sindhu phase of India's history, obviously. Right? So these cattle did not arrive there in Egypt by themselves. Okay, let's go for a walk and we'll go to Egypt. Let us go for a walk and we will go to Egypt. That's not like what cattle do. Cattle travel with human beings. So obviously Indians went all the way to Egypt and introduced this cattle there, and they were very popular. And then you have these Zebu cattle appearing all over Africa. And today you have hybrid cattle all over Africa which have Zebu genes. And so the first evidence of Zebu cattle in Egypt goes back at least 4,000 years. So clearly there was significant connectivity and connections and relations of trade, whatever, between ancient India and ancient Egypt. But that doesn't corroborate this particular claim. It's possible this claim is correct, but we don't have evidence thus far. All right, that's what I would say. Okay, another question by Saurabh Badoria. A few people say that the Harappans were not Vedic as they speak a Proto-Dravidian language, and it is confirmed from the Mesopotamian accounts that as they trade with the Indians, the Harappans, and import sesame oil from Harappa, they called it by the name Ilha, and today in Tamil we call it Illa. So apparently that proves that the Harappans spoke a Proto-Dravidian language and they were not Vedic. Look, I have always said this so many times, that India was not a disconnected place. Okay, look at India. If you see today's India, it's a gigantic subcontinent sized nation state. You have so many languages spread across the subcontinent, in different parts of the subcontinent, east, west, north, south, right? And yet it is completely networked, completely interconnected in so many different ways. So everybody in every part of India is aware of people from every other part of India, and it's completely interconnected. And I assure you that 4,000, 5,000 years ago, we had the same thing. It's not like we had different civilizations, one Kiladi civilization here, and one Puri civilization there, and one Indus Valley civilization here, and a Chandraketugar civilization there. Every new archaeological site they discover, they call it a new civilization. That is ridiculous, that is risible, that is asinine, that is laughable. India was a single civilization. And it's possible that you had people from various parts of India who were trading with Mesopotamia from the Saraswati Sindhu region, because it is kind of bordering Mesopotamia almost after you cross Iran, Persia, Marhashi, Illam, and so on, right? So it's possible that Proto-Tamil speaking people were there, and they were the ones possibly who were bringing in sesame oil and taking it all the way to the Mesopotamian region, and maybe their word became commonly used in Mesopotamia, right? That's also a plausible explanation to this. The point is this: look, how will we once and for all determine what language was spoken in the Saraswati Sindhu region during that period of our history? Very simple. When the script is deciphered, that's it. That's all it will take. Decipher the script, and the answer is right in front of you. So the question is, every script in the world, ancient script, has been deciphered, but why not the script? What is preventing people from deciphering the script is the question. I am patient. I am willing to wait another 50 years. The script will be deciphered. And when it's deciphered, well, that will give us the answer. If it is Proto-Tamil, I will accept it happily that it's Proto-Tamil or whatever, a Dravidian language. If it is Sanskrit, well, you better accept it. So that's it. Okay, that is the only thing that's going to be the clinching evidence of what language was spoken in the Saraswati Sindhu region during that phase of our history. Okay, I've got so many other questions. I don't think I'll be able to take all of them. I've got only 16 minutes left. Let's take some more questions, of course. Okay, Saurabh Badoria once again. Can Sanskrit become an AI language, artificial intelligence language? Look, AI is based on mathematics and statistics, okay? So you can't use natural languages in that. What are these chatbots? What are these large language models? These are gigantic bunches of equations and algorithms. Algorithms are bunches of statistical equations, okay? Mathematical equations about statistics. It's a lot of matrix manipulation, matrix multiplication, calculation of all kinds that happen behind the scenes. And there's reinforcement training, all kinds of various kinds of training that is done. And then that's how these chatbots become proficient, and they seem to have they seem to have passed the Turing test. Okay. So, and what are these chatbots fed? They're fed a tremendous amounts of text. Most of it in the English language, and obviously in other languages as well. I mean, I'm sure that if you go to ChatGPT, whichever version we have today, and you feed it a bunch of Hindi text, then it will be able to possibly give a reasonably good translation into English, and vice versa, I'm sure. Now, I would like to see a large language model trained exclusively on Sanskrit text. We have a tremendous amount of Sanskrit texts. All the Vedas, all the Upanishads, all the Puranas, all the whatever else, we have tremendous amounts of Sanskrit texts. Why not train a large language model on Sanskrit texts only? And then you can give it other abilities as well. Won't that be great? I would like to see that happen, but somebody has to fund it, right? And in India, people want to fund all the wrong kinds of things. So anyway, so I would like that to happen. And such Sanskrit is the most precise, algorithmically precise language in human history, thanks to the rules of Panini. So you do that with classical Sanskrit and Vedic Sanskrit, then it may actually even end up deciphering the Harappan text. That may happen. Yeah. So right. Okay, this is a large question by Karthik. I really love the way you share your knowledge in science and geopolitics. Thank you. I'm sorry to ask a personal question. If you would like to answer. I live in a remote city in Switzerland. So far, I'm doing well in my life. My first child was born in my early 40s. I would like to ask you how to raise my child with Bharatiya values and culture. As parents, we are so busy in our busy corporate work schedules. It's very challenging for me in the Western world to teach the child about our culture and values. I'm also not thinking to go back to India as of now because of our education system and living standards. Although the education system is very good here in the academics, but I feel it's more materialistic. I have the greatest respect for our Sanatan Dharma, which is the foundation of the core values of my life. Despite my busy schedules, I'm trying to find a balance to learn more and more about our history and culture so that I can pass on this knowledge to my child. I heard opinions from different Bharatiya intellectuals, and your opinion is highly appreciated. Okay. Yeah, this is a dilemma that everybody faces, whether you're in the West or even in India. Even in Bharat, how do I raise my kid in such a way that my kid will have an appreciation and respect and a solid grounding in his or her own ancestral culture and values? That's the question, right? Now, today, if you look at Bharat, if you look at India, people are terribly deracinated. Why are they deracinated? The question you have to ask is, why are Indian kids today deracinated and not in touch with their culture? Firstly, because of the education system, which is in a foreign language. It is a foreign education system. It's not an Indian education system. It doesn't teach you anything about Indian history or Indian culture or Indian philosophy or Indian values, Indian morality, Indian ethics. Nothing. There is nothing Indian about the Indian education system. It's the only education system in the world today that doesn't teach children their own culture. And the education is in a language that's a foreign language. I mean, you can have an education in your mother tongue, but then you won't get any jobs because you won't be able to speak English proficiently. So everybody wants their kids to go in an English medium school, and it's typically going to be a so-called convent school where they will fill these kids' heads with foreign values and culture and whatever else, right? So how do you ensure that kids in India have a grounding in their culture? First of all, make them, and abroad as well, obviously, it applies to all kids. Firstly, make them learn their own mother tongue, reading and writing. Spend half an hour a day, 1 hour a day. And once they have a solid grounding in that after a couple of years, make sure they learn the basics of Sanskrit. And Sanskrit is the easiest language to learn, by the way. It's been made out artificially to be a difficult language. It's the easiest language to learn. Okay, so teach them their own mother tongue, reading and writing, and then teach them the basics of Sanskrit, if possible, proper Sanskrit. And then it's going to be almost impossible for them. And if you do this at an early age, from the age of 5 or 6, by the time they're 10, they'll have a solid grounding in their culture, and that's going to be part of their life forever, as long as they live. So that's what you do. And then once they have an understanding of the mother tongue and the Sanskrit language, then you can expose them to various texts in this language, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, etc. You do that, then it's impossible for the kid to not have an appreciation of Bharatiya values and culture and their ancestral heritage. That's what I would say you need to do. Obviously, it's easier said than done. Okay, today we have so many distractions, especially for kids. They're all scrolling up and down screens. The iPad kids, the Gen Z and whatnot. It's really, really difficult. Gen Alpha, all that. But yeah, I mean, that's a problem everybody faces, and we have to make it happen. So that's what I would say. All right. All the best, sir. Tejas Kulkarni asks the age-old question. Why is Alexander known as the Great while Genghis Khan is called a barbarian? Genghis Khan conquered more land than Alexander. Why do historians call out atrocities by Mongols in every article about Genghis Khan on the internet and casually shrug off what Alexander did in Persepolis to the people of Thebes, in the city of Tyre, and finally in India? What are your views on these kinds of biases on history? You know what Napoleon said? History is a set of lies agreed upon. This was said by Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay? Napoleone Bonaparte. If you were to, okay, I'll not go talk about that. So the point is this: the history we are taught is a purely Eurocentric version of history. Whether it's India, whether it's anywhere in the world, we are taught a Eurocentric version of history. And the only thing that matters in this Eurocentric version of history is the past 2000 years, essentially. There was nothing before the past 2000 years. It's called prehistory, according to them. They call it prehistory. Well, according to that, even Alexander was a prehistoric creature. Anyhow, but Alexander is the great, isn't he? Because he is one of the great conquerors of European origin. So I'll tell you what Alexander did. So his father dies. Okay, his father was Philip of Macedon, great guy, great conqueror who had made plans to conquer Persia. So Philip of Macedon, before he can go on his conquest of Persia, is assassinated during a military parade. And before the assassin can be apprehended, the assassin is also killed off. So then the question has not been answered till today: who was behind the murder of Philip of Macedon? Was it Alexander's mother? Was it Alexander himself or somebody else? Blah, blah, blah. But then Alexander has to reconsolidate his father's hold on Greece. So he goes to the city of Thebes, which refuses to submit to him. So he besieges the city of Thebes. Eventually, after several months, I believe, the city of Thebes, the siege finally ends with the breaking of the walls. And Alexander goes and sells half the population of Thebes into slavery. But he was merciful there because he only sold them into slavery. Then later on, in the Eastern Mediterranean region, the city of Tyre in present-day Lebanon. Shall we go to the map? Let's go to the map. The city of Tyre, which was an island city off the coast of Lebanon. Where is Tyre today? Not here. Where is it? Where is Tyre? Tyre. Here is Tyre. So it used to be an island city just off the coast. So Alexander besieges the city, and the siege lasts several months. It's a very frustrating siege because the defenders of Tyre are very valiant in their defense. Eventually, finally, when the siege succeeds and Alexander takes the city of Tyre, he crucifies tens of thousands of people, crucifies them to death, tens of thousands of innocent people. But I can assure you that your textbooks will not talk about this, what Alexander did in Tyre. And then what he did in Persia, his horrific atrocities in Persia. And then when he tried to invade India, I mean, when he was in the western borders of India, the kind of atrocities he perpetrated on innocent people, burning entire villages alive, crucifying people, burning Brahmins alive. God knows what kind of things he did. Absolute barbaric brute of a person, Alexander the Greek. But he's considered to be, he's called Alexander the Great. When it comes to Shri Genghis Khan, he was the greatest conqueror of all time. And obviously, when you conquer, you're gonna fight people, you're gonna destroy armies, you're gonna besiege cities. Things will happen, but these are the standard things that happen in any war. But because Genghis Khan was not a European, because Genghis Khan was not a white man, all kinds of stories are spread about him. He's alleged to be the worst rapist in human history. Huh? Because apparently lots of people in Central Asia and various parts of the world have a certain Mongol origin haplogroup. Okay? And why is this so? Does it mean that Genghis Khan had violated so many women. It was his favorite pastime, was it so? To prove that this is Genghis Khan's DNA, you need a sample of Genghis Khan's physical tissue, bone, hair, or whatever. Do we have it? We don't have it. So, on what basis are they making the claim? Just because there is a Mongolic origin haplogroup that's present far and wide. The Mongolians were a very small nation. The Mongolian army was 100,000 strong during the times of Genghis Khan. 100,000 strong. You could fit the entire Mongolian army that conquered half the world in the Eden Garden Stadium. That was the number of men with which he conquered half the known world. And obviously, they had wives and whatever else in these parts of the world. And it is such a small population group that they will have very uniform DNA. So that explains why you have very similar DNA all in such a vast region of the world. But they attributed to Genghis Khan apparently raping women, which is a complete fabrication, complete, utter fabrication, and so on. And Alexander, obviously, we know what he did to Persepolis. Parshvapur. It's not Persepolis, it's Parshvapur. The Greeks called it Persepolis because they have to mangle everything. Right? Artaxerxes. The king's name was not Artaxerxes. It was Artakshatra. And there's the king Xerxes. It was not Xerxes, it was Kshayarsha. Arya Ramnes. It was not Arya Ramnes, it was Arya Ramna. It was not Nebuchadrezzar. It was Nabukudrachar. So they mangle all these words and mangle everybody's name. It was not Sandra Kotos, it was Chandragupta. So whatever the Greeks did is considered to be great. Whatever Julius Caesar did in his conquest of Gaul and the Celtic regions is not called genocide. It's just called conquest, reasonable conquest. But Genghis Khan is considered to be a brute. When Alexander, in a drunken night of drinking, burned the city of Parshvapur to cinders, it is just not. They blame it on a woman apparently, but not on Alexander. So it's just double standards. It's a purely Eurocentric view of the world. It's a very jealous view of the world because there have been so many great people who are not Europeans. I mean, look at the way they talk about India as if India has contributed nothing to the world and so on. But yeah, we got to be aware of this. Let them pursue their agenda, but we should know what they're up to. And that's why I do these things. I talk about this. That's the reason why I do it. Okay, Balram Putin says, what was the original culture of Europe? How did it get wiped out and by whom? Okay, let's go to map to understand where Europe is. Okay, we're talking about Europe, this region. What was the original culture of Europe? Before Christianity. Before Christianity, Europe had a single overarching culture, just like India has a single overarching culture, which manifests itself locally in a wide variety of different forms. Look at India. Everywhere you go in India, the majority of the population worships the same gods and has the same culture and civilizational values and everything else. But the manifestation of this civilizational of this culture is very different in various different parts of India. Very diverse manifestations of the same culture geographically. The same thing was there in Europe. It was the same culture with very different local manifestations. Okay? And which culture, which gods were these? These were nothing but the old Vedic gods, which were worshipped across Europe, including in Anatolia, including in Greece, including in Rome, including in the Germanic regions, the Nordic regions, the Viking regions, the Celtic regions, everywhere, the Slavic regions. It was the same gods as the old Rigvedic gods who were worshipped in a variety of different forms, in a variety of different names. And obviously, some of these cultures were more bloodthirsty than the others and so on. And the Christians call them the pagans. So that was the original culture of Europe. You could call it the old Indo-European culture, which sprang out of India. And lots of people will not like what I say, but deal with it. Now, what happened to this culture? How was it wiped out? By whom was it wiped out? It was wiped out by the Christians. Okay, Christianity emerges out of where? Out of the Middle East, out of Bethlehem and Galilee and all this region, and eventually it becomes a movement, kind of the local woke movement in Rome. And they alleged that the Romans perpetrated all kinds of atrocities against the Christians, and there were lots of martyrs and all. So they claimed victimhood, they claimed martyrdom, and eventually they took over the whole of the empire. And eventually Christianity became the dominant force in the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire split into two: the Byzantine Empire, which is the eastern part of the Roman Empire, which was based in Constantinople, present day Turkey temporarily. And there was the Western Roman Empire, which was based out of Rome, which became the Holy Catholic Roman Empire. So Rome never fell, it simply became the Vatican Empire. And it was this Vatican Empire and the all powerful popes who conquered Europe through Christianity and destroyed, smashed all of the old culture out of Europe. That is what happened. So the original culture of Europe was destroyed, smashed out of existence by the Christians, by the church, is what happened. Okay, let's take one or two more questions. Shall I take a few questions from the live chat? I've already spent 2 hours taking questions from the comments. Let's take some questions from the live chat. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions you want to ask me now in the live chat. Dheeraj says, how to prevent Hinduism from going extinct? How to prevent Hinduism from going extinct? Practice Hinduism. Practice and promote Hinduism. That's it. And ensure that your kids are exposed to Hinduism and they actually practice it. So you have to teach them your mother tongue, you have to teach them the basics of Sanskrit, and you have to expose them to the Mahabharata, Ramayana, and whatever your family and local traditions are. And make sure that they actually go to the temple regularly and all that. You have to practice something to prevent it from going extinct. It's as simple as that. Karan Nalawat says, your opinion on homeschooling. I think it's a very good idea if you can pull it off. It's very hard to pull off homeschooling because the parents need to either hire a private tutor or to tutor the kids themselves, which is easier said than done. You need to spend a lot of time, set aside a significant amount of time for doing that. So if you can pull it off, it's a great option, because the schooling system in India is horrible. It will brainwash your children and wokify them and turn them into God knows what, urban naxals. It will completely alienate them from your own culture, your own roots, from the heritage of your own ancestors. So ideally, if possible, you should do it. And you also need to ensure that your kid is socialized well, because homeschooling it kind of can isolate your kids, from other kids. So yeah, that's the thing. Okay. Kiran Bandagi says, in the past, an asteroid hit and destroyed most of nature. Maybe Mother Earth created intelligent beings, that is humans, to protect Earth. What's your take on this theory? I think evolution is a natural process. Mother Earth doesn't need protection as such. And so today we have, let's assume this theory is correct. Let's assume that Mother Nature has created humans to protect the Earth, because in the past, asteroids destroyed much of nature and caused extinction events, like the 66 million years ago event, the Chicxulub impact event that killed off the non-avian dinosaurs. Well, if you look at that event, which happened 66 million years ago, it killed off the non-avian dinosaurs, but the avian dinosaurs survived and they are still alive. And that event did not kill off the ancestors of the mammals, which includes our ancestors. So it did not kill everything off. The avian dinosaurs are still out there. They're still out there. I saw a few today. I saw a few avian dinosaurs today. And our ancestors survived that event. So that event happened 66 million years ago. Now, let's say in the future, let's say in 3 years' time, we are not aware of it, but an asteroid is going to come and smash into our planet. Are we today in a position to prevent that from happening? I tell you what, we're not. So if Mother Earth created humans to protect Earth, why are we not in a position to do that? We would need at least 5 to 10 years notice. I would say ideally 10-20 years notice of an asteroid coming towards the Earth before we can actually take some proper action. You would either need to use a gravitational tractor to displace, to nudge the asteroid into a different trajectory, because the nuclear weapons won't work. They simply won't work. You can take the biggest nuclear weapon you have, the Tsar Bomba, and detonate it on an asteroid. It will have no real effect. The asteroid will still go and impact Earth, but in a million more pieces, which may be even more harmful. So, yeah, so it doesn't look like that's the case, right? All right, let's see some other questions. Anisha says, the Bangladeshi PM, Mrs. Sheikh Hasina, spoke about the CIA trying to make a Christian state out of Bangladesh and Myanmar, as well as northeast parts of India. My views are, I wasn't aware of the statement, but if she has made this statement, she is 100% right. She is 100% right. There's a whole civil war situation happening in Burma right now, Myanmar. Okay. And US missionaries are involved, UK missionaries are involved in this. There is this entire bunch of tribes in the northern part of Myanmar. Let's go to the map. Who are fighting the government of Myanmar. Okay. And this northern region is right next to Nagaland, Manipur, and India's far east. And all these tribes are apparently now Christian. And there are these evangelists at work over there who are supporting these tribes, these various tribal and ethnic groups, against the government of Myanmar, the military government of Myanmar. And we know that the great Shri Jawaharlal Nehru spared no effort into Christianizing large parts of our far east. Mizoram is completely Christian, 99.8% or 9%. Nagaland is almost entirely Christian. Meghalaya, much of it is Christian. Manipur, I would say the majority are Christian now. And those who are not Christian in Manipur are under siege now. And they are under siege by foreigners who are coming across the border, from Burma. And these so-called cookies are not even Burmese, because they don't speak the Burmese language. They don't practice Burmese culture. They don't even respect Burma. So there's a geopolitical game at play over here when it comes to the Manipur issue. It's not some misgovernance or a law and order issue. In the 1980s and all, when India used to complain about Pakistani terrorism to the Americans used to say it's a law and order issue. You people are not able to take care of the law and order in your state. When it was Pakistani terrorism that was being funded by the Americans themselves. So similarly, something else and something similar is happening right now in this region. They want to destabilize and destroy Myanmar. They want to destabilize and completely Christianize the far east of India. And the cookies are also fighting the government of Bangladesh, by the way. So they want that in Bangladesh also. These cookies, these ragtag tribals, they are fighting three countries. They're fighting Burma, they're fighting India, and they're fighting Bangladesh. And they want to create an artificial, fictitious nation called Zalingam, which is Cookie Land or whatever, a nation in Christ. Okay? So what the Bangladeshi PM is saying is 100% factually correct. Okay. Zavi Kotsu says, I am Zavi from Kohima, Nagaland. Can you tell me about how much gold can be found in Nagaland as per your quick knowledge? I'm not aware of the amount of gold that's in Nagaland. This region, this part of India, the far east of India, is rich in natural resources. There is oil, there is various kinds of metals. There could be gold. I wasn't aware of this. There is definitely uranium and whatnot. So I think there could be a lot, and much of it has not even been explored. So you need to do some prospecting, etc., to find out how much of what is available. I don't think that's been done there. And obviously, this is a very beautiful region, very pristine environments, except in Manipur, where the poppy plantations have destroyed the forest. But in Nagaland, I think it's still very, very clean and very safe. And so the nature has been well preserved. The ecology, the environment is reasonably well preserved. So if you discover big reserves of whatever and you do mining, it could kind of affect the environment and that sort of thing. So that is one consideration. But at least we should be aware of what's out there. So I wasn't aware that there could be gold in Nagaland. I will look it up. Maybe I can take this up the next time. But I wasn't aware of this. But I would not be surprised if you find tremendous amounts of resources in this region. Okay. Let's noob clash of clan. If Russia and the US destroy each other, what will happen? It will destroy the world. As simple as that. Because if they destroy each other, it will be nuclear war, which will destroy the whole world, and we don't want that to happen. Nuclear weapons are not to be spoken of lightly. We never want the use of nuclear weapons ever in the future, because you don't know how dangerous they are. They will destroy the world. Okay. What else do we have? What else? What else? What else? Radhika says, how do you think India will take over Pakistan? What are your favorite geopolitics books? I don't have any geopolitics books favorite because there are no books on geopolitics. You can read books by Kissinger. You can read books by Brzezinski, Zbigniew Brzezinski. You can read books. My favorite geopolitics books are actually history books. You study history, you learn geopolitics. How do you think India will take over Pakistan? India doesn't want to take over Pakistan in the near future. Okay, Pakistan will eventually collapse under its own weight because it is an artificial nation. There's too much strife in Pakistan. There is too much oppression in Pakistan, and eventually it will collapse on its own. And then you will have the emergence of independent nations like Balochistan, Pashtunistan, which may reintegrate with Afghanistan. They will have independent Sindh, and so on. We don't want to reintegrate these regions right now with India because of the highly radicalized population. Let them settle down for a few decades, and eventually the subcontinent will reunite through a natural process. Right now, we don't want that. We don't want to go to war with Pakistan. We don't want to trade with Pakistan. Let Pakistan deal with its fate on its own. It will collapse under its own weight in due time through a natural process. Tejas says, you said that Mihira Kula was an atheist because of Chinese sources, but his coins show tridents on them, which associates him with Shiva. And some inscriptions said that he bent head only in front of Shiva. Opinions. While there are different interpretations of history, there is something called the Tamgha in the Hunnic culture. Tamgha. Let's take a look at that on the screen, shall we? Let's go to Google. Okay. And let's do one second, not this Google. Let me once again go back to screen. Here we are. So, what is a Tamgha? Tamgha. Tamgha, Hunnic Tamgha, right? So it's an abstract seal, Hunnic. So these are various symbols that the Huns used. These were like symbols that every king had a symbol of his own. So many of these look like tridents, and this could perhaps be Mihira Kula. And many of these guys had various symbols that looked like tridents. Some of them had the head of a elephant, some of them would have the head of a bull, but the Tamgha is typically this sort of symbol. And some people would interpret that as a trident, but it may not necessarily be a trident. All right. But once again, what we are told is that Mihira Kula was a very cruel king. He was an atheist. It is said that the Buddhists despised Mihira Kula because of his oppression and his heavy-handedness. The Brahmins also despised Mihira Kula. And it's only after he died and his successors came to power that things became good, and those successors were fully Indian. So there are various different sources and different interpretations that give us different ideas of what actually was there. But I would say that this trident-like structure on his coins could actually be his Tamgha. All right. Okay. That brings us to the end of today's session. Once again, thank you so much for all the questions. As always, I cannot take everyone's questions, and I apologize to those of you who have been asking. I could not take the questions, but I will do more of these live streams much more frequently. 3 more coming up next week. So keep attending. Hopefully, everybody gets to have their questions answered by me. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next live stream. All right. Take care, and I'll see you soon, and keep raising your standards.